Hi, welcome to C-Suite Talks. I'm Dianne Gubin, and today we are talking about women, money, and power. I'm here with my co-host.
Beth Hilbing, co-CEO C-Suite, and today we're speaking with Gayle Bartscherer, a global CEO and currently CEO of Live Wine. Gayle has built a remarkable career in the luxury wine world while staying true to her working class roots in England. And that's why you don't like ice or sugar. Just teasing. Fluent in 3 languages and experienced in markets around the globe, Gayle has led iconic brands like Duckhorn Portfolio, which has wonderful wines, and Jackson Family Wines, and now heads Live Wine. This is the first director-to-consumer wine marketplace in the U.S. She's passionate about breaking barriers for women in leadership, mentoring the next generation, and proving that with vision and grit, you can go from humble beginnings to transforming an entire industry. So welcome, Gayle, and also a C-suite committee member in San Francisco, and we love having Gayle part of our community.
Yes, thank you, Gail.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
And Gail also went to the University College of London, which was where my daughter got her master's, which is like the most amazing school. So I just want to put out a plug there too.
Such a great school. Love that place.
It is. It is. So tell us about your early background, because I know that really shaped who you are and, the work you're doing today.
It really did. And I don't know that you realize it until you get a little bit older and you start reflecting back on your life. But yeah, I mean, there was certainly a happy childhood. My parents were loving, wonderful people, but we were not well off. Far from it. We were definitely paycheck to paycheck. And there was often not quite enough food at the end of the week. Both my parents were blue collar. They worked I come from the northwest of England, which was very much part of the Industrial Revolution. So it was all about cotton mills, so they both worked in the cotton mills, and so there were no frills in our childhood. It was very much 2 working parents, again, not quite enough to go around, and I think that really shaped myself and my brother and sister in who we are. And there was just no safety net, right? We were on our own to make our own ways in the world, and it was either to continue along the same path or you try to break out of that mold and go further.
So how did you with that grit and perspective, navigate through your career to where you are today?
It's always been, I think it taught me very early on to be incredibly resilient. At a really early age, one of my teachers recognized that I had some academic ability and wanted me to go to a private school, and I won a scholarship to this private school. So my parents were very proud, and it was lovely, but I was the only girl there in a homemade uniform, and it was really challenging. And I remember distinctly that one of my friends was Caroline McCartney, and she was second or third or fourth or fifth cousin, something like that. There's some tenuous relationship to Sir Paul McCartney. And I remember her telling me one day, as girls do, like, my mom doesn't want you hanging out with us because she thinks you're, a bad influence. You come from the wrong side of town, or whatever it was, And then I remember seeing her mom several years later when our exam results came out. And back in those days, they used to publish the exam results in the local paper. And I did well, and much, much better than her daughter did. And she came up to me and said, "Oh, congratulations." And she probably didn't know that her daughter had told me what but it was just a reminder, that yes, privilege can get you a long way. And I'm nothing against, great for anybody who has that. But coming from nothing shouldn't stop you either. I've always had that determination. I've always had that grit. And I've always, it's more, my driving force in life has just been to follow my instincts and to do what I love. And I think I always knew that I was never just going to be, again, from a very early age, and without even be able to articulate it, that I wasn't just going to do what my parents did. So, my brother and I were the first people in our entire family to go to college, for example. But from a leadership perspective, I mean, obviously that taught me empathy from a very early on. I've always been a very empathetic leader, but it also, I live by the platinum rule as a leader, and leadership is so important to me. So the golden rule is kind of treat people the way you want to be treated. And the platinum rule really is treat them the way they want to be treated. So people come from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different cultures, different socioeconomic classes. They have different expectations. They're bringing different things to the table. So what works really well to motivate, encourage, develop one individual may not work at all for somebody else who's just from an entirely different space. So really trying, and it's harder this way, but really taking the time to get to know the individual, what makes them tick, and really work at developing them. And I've really always approached leadership as, how do I help you at whatever stage in the career you're at to move along the path? Not everybody wants to run and lead and grow, but how do I help you make the most of what it is that you want to accomplish in your career?
Well, Gayle, that's so beautiful. So tell us, how did you get into the luxury wine industry? And you're also in the Bay Area too. So you went from Northwest England, you said, right?
I majored in languages, and I'd lived in France and Italy, and I traveled a bunch in Europe, and I hadn't been to the US. So I just sort of happened to come here, and I got a job as an accountant, because I did a second degree in accounting. So it was really important to have a financial kind of basis for whatever else I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that was important. And I got a job as an accountant for a French company, because at that point in LA, and I wasn't even sure I was going to stay, but I got a visa, I got a job, and blah, 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 all of that. And the owner of the company was very French and just loved sharing wine. So I got into Bordeaux and Champagne, and all of a sudden I just fell in love with wine. And I worked for the company for 5 years, and rose to actually run the company. It was a very, very small subsidiary of a French company and based in Southern California. But that's when I got the wine bug, and I just fell in love with wine, and I knew I wanted to get into the wine industry. So then what did I do? I networked like crazy. I went to school, I went back to school, nothing crazy, but took some wine classes at UCLA, read, there's some great reference materials in wine, some great kind of like the Bibles of the wine industry, and sort of read through those, really taught myself a lot. Went to events, and eventually that led to me being offered a job in the industry. But it wasn't all unicorns and rainbows. I had to take a 50% pay cut to get into the industry I wanted to. But I knew I wanted it. I knew I'd found a passion, and that sort of separates everything. Once you realize that there's something you really want to do, it changes the dynamic completely. So, and I just went from there. I've been in the wine industry now for 25 years, and I've loved every minute of it, and don't regret it. And I plan to stay in this industry, for the rest of my career, if it'll have me.
I love that. So before we talk about the business, Beth, so Gayle, is it red, white, champagne? Like, what's your favorite?
Oh gosh, I love it all. But these days, I'll be honest, I do drink a lot of white. As I've gotten older, I prefer whites. They're easier on the palate. They're lighter, lower in alcohol. Honestly, I find it very hard to turn down champagne, especially good champagne. There's so many great champagnes. But I like a lot of lean whites these days. So I'm having a moment of just loving Italian white wines at the moment. But that's me. But I love Pinot Noir. I love all the reds. I just don't drink them.
I know. I'm the same way, for sure. Yeah. So as you were entering into the wine business, tell us what you felt being a woman in the wine business. I know there are women winemakers, and probably more prevalent today than there were way back when. And then how did you move forward as a woman in the male-dominated industry?
Right. So are you actually a winemaker personally, or you're more on the business side?
No, I've always been on the business side. And it is challenging. And even today, I think it's a fairly balanced industry, but it wasn't that many years ago that I was in a room in Hong Kong with kind of the heads of all wine companies from all over the world. And I was sitting very close to Jeannie Cho Lee, who is what I think she was the first female MW from Asia. And I said, we are the only two women in the room. And she was actually speaking and she mentioned that. And that wasn't, I mean, that was 10 years ago, but it wasn't that long ago, you know?
Right.
So, and you know, and just sitting in a meeting and having, I remember the first things for me were, and being British as well, were all the sports analogies. I just didn't get a single one of them. You know, like we're going to call an audible on this. I mean, I think I finally found out what that meant last year. And just all that silly thing, like having to sort of learn, yeah, because you had to learn the predominant language of the room. You know, I mean, I'm all about authenticity, and I think today we've come a really, really long way. But when I first started out, and certainly as I was rising through the leadership ranks, and it was very male dominated, and they were very welcoming, by the way. It wasn't, there were no barriers. I've been incredibly lucky in my career to have some really strong mentors and leaders who've believed in me, both male and female. It's not so not there's no argument there, but yeah, you're in a room full of men who have a completely different frame of reference to you and who spend their times on the golf course, and that's not my cup of tea, you know. So it can be challenging, but you just find the moments and you figure out your voice, and you know, you build your toolkit. You know, I think having credibility, I think for me, one thing I've always just been so happy I did it, and I just did it knowing that I needed it, was to have that secondary accounting skill set, because I can read any set of financials. So immediately I was able to present myself as a really strong business person. And that's a piece of advice I give to everybody. Like, build your skill set. Because if you intend and you hope to grow into a leadership role, you will need those skills. And it's no shame in not having them, but go get them. You know,
yeah, no, it made a real difference when I
good
learned
advice.
For sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
great
Beth has
advice.
her MBA, so for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you scaled a company, because I think that is something that many women want to go into business, or they are in business, and you really don't get that opportunity to, you know, what does it mean to scale a company, right? I mean, it's small to big, and you certainly have done that. So how do you do it?
Well, I've worked for two, you know, of the larger wine companies in the US. And so I certainly cannot take responsibility for scaling Kendall Jackson or anything like that, but certainly growing a division within a company. And that just takes focus. It takes knowledge. I've always approached my career in a very entrepreneurial way and seen opportunities for the business to grow where perhaps there was no attention. And in a sort of a very early stages of my career at Jackson Family, I went to the CEO and I proposed a role to him that didn't exist in the company at all at the time. And that was running international marketing. And I said, we're missing an opportunity because our marketing to the US market grew perfectly, but the things we talk about in the US market do not translate internationally. And we need to, and we're missing the opportunity to make ourselves relevant to these other markets. And not only did he hear me out, but he gave me the job because I've convinced him that I had the skill set. Now, so I'm not for 1 minute suggesting you go in there and I think a lot of people think, well, I deserve to be promoted, or I deserve this because I've been here X number of years. And it's really about, where is the business opportunity? Do you have the skill set that aligns with that business opportunity? And that is what you pitch. And that is how you make a difference and grow a business that is in a meaningful way. And similarly at Duckhorn, which is and was a fabulous company, but it grown very organically, a team that had been in place for a very long time. But I could see, especially after having spent 14 wonderful years with the Jackson family, with whom I'm still very close and have nothing but love and respect for both companies, actually. But I could see that they were at the precipice of sort of, they've stayed small, but in order to take that next step, they really need to think about the business a little bit differently and really think about the way they thought and talked and messaged and developed the brands as individually versus as a just a set of brands. So I really reorganized the entire marketing. I took my time to do it. I didn't just jump in there and say, okay, we're doing this right now and everything happens. I took my time to figure it out, learn the team, learn the skill sets, but reorganized it to be brand focused. And it wasn't previously. And previously it made perfect sense to be functionally focused because that was where the company was. But then it had grown to this point, and you had to realize to grow further, you've got to be giving these brands the individual focus that they need so that they can shine on their own. So that was a big piece of my contribution there, as well as innovation. I think I learned very early on not to be afraid. And there's a lot of fear in the wine industry, especially in luxury, of trying something that might not work or might damage your perception. But you can try things in a really small way. Before my time at Duckhorn, they tried seltzers, for example, and it didn't work, but it was a great try. It was a great little product, just didn't work. Okay, so you fail quickly. It goes away and it's a blip and everyone forgets about it. So I think in my intro at Duckhorn, I pitched low alcohol wines. And I remember this first C-suite meeting, I brought the low alcohol Sauvignon Blanc.
It was great.
We just launched it. It took me 2 years to get them to do it, but it sold out immediately. And it was just like this great, because everybody wanted, it was for decoy. It was a perfect line extension for that brand at a time when low alcohol was really taking off. So just kind of really being, aware of the trends in the market, pushing with data and with strategic intent, not just a passion project, but things that really made sense in the particular industry or sphere you're in. So for me, it was I made a lot of impact in the international world at JFW and in the international brands that they owned as well, treating them as from a country first perspective. So if you're in Italy, you think about your brand very differently than you do if you're in the US.
Right.
That was a whole change of mindset too. And then at Duckhorn, just really thinking about, okay, this company has grown, and to take that next step, it needs to shift, and I think we're able to accomplish that change in a really I think in a really organic way that felt really natural. And then since then, obviously, the company's changed again. And again, it's getting ready to grow and continue on its path. I mean, that's the one constant is change, right? And so it's nothing to be afraid of. And there's a lot of, staying still. I mean, change for change's sake is not a good idea, but staying still is not necessarily, you can stagnate that
good
way.
either.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
no,
Gayle,
exactly.
we've heard feedback from our podcast that many people listen because they just learn so much. So, for someone who's learning how to scale internationally, which you did, just kind of break it down, like very briefly. You said, I'm going to go international. So, what'd you do? Did you go to every networking event internationally? Did you go to all the big players there and just say, here's my wine? And you said country by country. So, just for somebody who's interested in going in that direction, maybe you can.
Well, I would say be really focused on your goal. And to be fair, there was already a thriving international business, but there wasn't, and I love this because the CEO at Jackson Family said this later. He said, I was wrong, because he used to have a saying, there was no zeros, which meant you can sell a case of every single wine. You find a case somewhere. That was his mantra. And he finally realized, and he was really, very humble about it. Like, that isn't the way. It's like, no, it's find the right product for the right market and focus on that. So Jackson Family had 50 brands. Are all 50 brands going to work in every single market? Of course not, right? So which brands are going to work in which markets, which are going to resonate? How do you and then you focus on them. So it's really about laser focus, the scattershot approach of trying to appeal to be all things to all people doesn't work. And especially internationally, when you think about a company like Jackson Family that's in the top 10 wine companies in the U.S., and the third largest family-owned company in the U.S., with a lot of brands and two massive brands, Kennel Jackson and La Crema, that are household names, internationally, they're not. Or they weren't. So we were building from scratch. So you had to, so it was really about, okay, what makes sense where. Europe was a haven in certain markets like the UK and Hong Kong were a haven for super high-end wines. Okay, let's focus on super high-end wines. We went on the Place de Bordeaux, which is a really high-end wine marketplace, really, where all the Bordeaux are sold, and Burgundy, and now top-end international wines. But really focusing on which channel and which markets made the most sense for the individual wines. That's really it, being specific and focused.
Can you tell us about, as we wrap up, can you tell us about Live Wine and where the concept come from and what is it about and what are you doing there?
Absolutely. So I left Alcoin and I just knew I wanted to do something different. My goal was to be a CEO within the wine industry, but I also wanted to just take a break and really think about what was next, do something different. And Live Wine approached me, and I just loved the concept, which was a marketplace for wine, a level playing field for wineries, just like Etsy, that connects wineries with consumers, and allows them to transact. So it doesn't hold product, it doesn't sell product, it doesn't take punitive margins, it just allows that direct connection. And so I came on board thinking the wine industry is in trouble. Sales are down. This is a great time for something like this. And if this works, knowing that it was a big if, this could be really, a platform for the entire industry. So I saw it as being something that could and can be something that's incredibly valuable to the industry, and it's a good news story, right? Because everybody benefits from it. It doesn't hurt anybody. It's not taking sales from somebody else, but we're sort of leveraging tech and AI to build an online community that's really hard to do otherwise. But we're basically taking where our consumer is today, which is digitally native and living their lives online, and transferring that to wine. And that does not exist. And building in, basically social commerce, social engagement with loyalty, which we can do because we don't own wine is very regulated, but we don't own or sell the product, so we're able to do that. And the goal is to really create this thriving community of wine enthusiasts who are buying directly from the source, just like you would at a farmer's market.
Right.
Great when you support a farmer at the farmer's market, and that's basically the idea. And you get the story. So this is all about the story and the behind the wine, right? What is it about this wine? Because the minute you hear the story, you fall in love, and that's our goal to accomplish online.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that 100%.
Thank you.
If you look at like our sponsor Uncle Nearest and what Fawn Weaver went through, that makes you want to go forward with that.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up, one last question is, what would you give advice to someone that wants to enter into this marketplace?
Enter into wine.
Yes.
Follow your passion. Learn, listen, be humble. Don't be afraid to go away and read some books. Be smart. Build your toolbox. Make sure you've got the right skill set. And if you don't have it, consider taking a job that maybe you're overqualified for just to learn that skill set. A job's not going to be handed to you on a platter. It wasn't for me. And then when you get there, find yourself an advocate, right? I think that's something that's really important for women as we think about mentorship. Mentorship is fabulous. I've been a mentor and a mentee. But when you're not in the room yet, find yourself an advocate who is in that room so that your name comes up at the right time. I think that is the best advice I can give anybody.
Love that. That is fabulous. Thank you.
Dianne, you want to take us home?
Oh, well, yeah, you know what, Beth? Why don't you give us our sponsors today, since I don't have anything in front of me right now?
Oh, okay, sure, no problem.
Okay.
So, Gayle, where do people find you? What's the best way to contact
please.
you? Gayle Bartscherer, Global CEO and CEO of Live Wines.
My email address is very simple, gayle@livewine.com. It's just GAYLE. That's the only thing that's challenging.
Oh, that's
Love
awesome.
that.
So we want to thank our sponsors, Con Resnick, Advisory Assurance and Tax Services, City National Bank, Cigna Health, Breakthrough Beverage, Uncle Nearest, as I mentioned, and C-Suite Executive Search. If you're hiring for your team, call us. We're happy to help. We have great executive search people to help you with that. And thank you for listening. hit your subscribe button on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you find podcasts. Leave us a review, 5 stars, of course. And follow us on social media. We love hearing from you. Email me, Beth at csweet.org, and visit our website and come out. Half of the best part about life is joining and coming to events.
Yeah, jump in, start swimming, meet all our fabulous women. You're fabulous too.
csweet.org. And we have a summit that we're going to be holding at Uncle Nearest September 10th and 11th. So we look forward to seeing you there, Gayle, and enjoying that event. Yes, come join us.
Thank you.